Ladies and gentlemen, love is beautiful until it isn't. One day it's the fire that warms you, the light that guides you, and the next, it's the ice that chills you to your core. You start questioning every word, every glance, every silent dinner. But here's the truth. When love turns cold, it's not the end of your story. It's the beginning of your power. Tonight, I'm going to show you how to stop breaking yourself for someone who's already gone and how to rise stronger than they ever imagined. Love doesn't usually shatter in a single moment. It doesn't often come crashing down with a loud, dramatic scene. More often than not, it fades quietly, subtly, in ways you don't immediately recognize. It's like ice forming on a lake. At first, the water still moves beneath the surface, still flows, still seems alive. But day by day, the cold creeps in until the surface becomes stiff, hard, and unyielding. That's how love turns cold. Gradually, silently, until one day you realize the warmth you relied on is no longer there. The first step to protecting yourself is to recognize that shift before it consumes you. This requires awareness, not paranoia, but attentiveness. You need to know what love feels like when it's alive, so you can notice when that feeling begins to change. That means paying attention to the tone in their voice, the length of their responses, the way their eyes meet yours, or don't. Small changes matter. They're the whispers before the storm. You'll notice it in the way conversations go from, "How was your day?" to "Yeah." You'll notice how once they couldn't wait to share everything with you, but now their words feel filtered, shortened, almost obligatory. It's not that they're being cruel, it's that the warmth has cooled and they may not even realize it themselves, but you will. If you're paying attention, you will feel it in your bones. Most people ignore these signs at first. They convince themselves they're imagining it. We're just busy. It's just stress. It's just a rough patch. And sometimes, yes, that's all it is. But ignoring your instincts completely is like refusing to notice the water rising in a sinking ship because you hope it's just a leak. If you ignore the shift for too long, you risk drowning in it. Recognizing the change isn't about jumping to conclusions. It's about staying grounded in reality. When love starts to fade, Denis, all becomes your biggest enemy. You tell yourself that if you just try harder, love will return to what it was. You start overcompensating, giving more, sacrificing more, doing whatever you can to bring the warmth back. But here's the truth. If you don't address the cold head on, you end up pouring your own warmth into a space that no longer reflects it back. You'll drain yourself trying to reignite something the other person isn't fighting for. The sooner you recognize the shift, the more power you have. Because awareness gives you options. It allows you to ask honest questions. Is this temporary? Is something going on? Are we both still invested? It lets you face the situation with clarity instead of confusion, and clarity is strength. You might feel fear when you notice the change, because it means you have to confront the possibility that the love you counted on isn't guaranteed, but pretending nothing's wrong doesn't protect you. It blinds you. When you see the signs, you can prepare your heart, set boundaries, and decide how much of yourself you are willing to keep giving. This isn't just about romantic relationships either. Friendships, family bonds, even business partnerships. Any form of connection can grow cold over time, and in each case, the principle is the same. Ignoring the shift only gives it more power. Acknowledging it early is your best defense. Sometimes, recognizing the change gives you the chance to save what's left. Maybe the cold has set in because of miscommunication, stress, or unspoken resentment. Addressing it openly can sometimes thaw the ice, but other times it simply confirms that the connection has run its course. In both cases, seeing it early gives you the choice to act from strength instead of reacting from desperation. There's a difference between fighting for love and chasing after it when it's already walking away. You can't make someone care if their heart has already closed off. You can't force warmth where there's no willingness to create it. That's why noticing the early signs matters. It keeps you from losing yourself in the process of trying to hold on to someone who's letting go. Think about it like this. A pilot doesn't wait for a plane to completely lose control before responding. They notice small shifts, the way the wind changes, the vibration in the controls, the angle of descent, and they adjust before the problem becomes fatal. Your relationships deserve the same vigilance. Notice the turbulence early, make adjustments, or, if necessary, prepare for a safe landing somewhere else. This awareness also prevents resentment from building. When you see the shift but pretend it isn't happening, you bottle up your feelings. You keep hoping for a turnaround that never comes. And when it doesn't, your pain turns to anger, not just at them, but at yourself for ignoring what you saw all along. Recognizing the change early lets you process your emotions in real time instead of letting them fester. There's also a self-respect element here. People who value themselves don't ignore reality to hold on to someone. They face the truth, even when it's uncomfortable. They know that pretending love is still alive when it's not is a form of self-betrayal. And nothing corrodes your confidence faster than betraying yourself. You have to trust yourself enough to believe what you feel. If something feels different, investigate it. Don't gaslight yourself into believing the coldness is just your imagination. Your instincts are often more accurate than you realize. You've been paying attention to this person for a long time. You know their patterns, their energy, their ways of expressing care. Watch. And those things change. It's not paranoia to notice. It's self-awareness. The challenge is staying calm when you see the signs. Fear can push you into panic mode, leading you to overreact or accuse without understanding. But calm awareness allows you to navigate the situation with composure. It allows you to protect your dignity while still seeking the truth. The earlier you spot the cold creeping in, the more choices you have. You can address it, you can step back, you can decide whether this is something worth investing in or something you need to release. But what you cannot do, what you must not do, is ignore it and hope it magically fixes itself. Because love, once it starts to freeze, rarely thaws on its own. Love's warmth is a living thing. It needs attention, care, and mutual effort. When you feel that warmth fading, you owe it to yourself to acknowledge it, not to rush into ending things, but to stay anchored in reality, to protect your own heart from the slow erosion that comes when you keep pretending the ice isn't there. When love starts to fade, the instinct for many people is to chase after it, clinging desperately to what once felt secure and unshakable. You remember the warmth, the laughter, the closeness, and you want it back so badly that you're willing to do almost anything to restore it. You tell yourself that if you just try harder, if you just give more, if you just prove how much you care, the other person will see your value and return to you with the same passion they once had. But the truth is, chasing after someone who is pulling away often has the opposite effect. It drains your energy, erodes your dignity, and hands over all your power to someone who has already shown you they may no longer want to hold it. When love walks away, it usually does so in stages. First comes emotional distance, then detachment, and finally, the absence of presence. Not always physical absence, but the absence of genuine connection. You feel it in the way they stop reaching out first, in how they no longer make time for you, in the way their attention drifts elsewhere. And yet, so many people see these signs and double down. They believe that if they push harder, send more messages, plan more surprises, make more sacrifices, they can win the person back. But here's the hard truth. When you have to beg for love to stay, it's not love anymore. It's survival mode. You can't convince someone to feel something they've decided not to feel. Love, at its core, is voluntary. It thrives on mutual choice, not persuasion. When you chase someone who's walking away, you're not reigniting passion. You're reinforcing the idea that they can withdraw without consequence while still holding your devotion. It sends a silent message. You can treat me with less, and I'll still stay. And once that message is sent, it's hard to undo. The reason letting go feels so terrifying is because the human mind clings to the familiar. Even when a relationship becomes cold, the memories of when it was warm keep you anchored. You think of the early days, the affection, the moments that made you feel alive. But nostalgia is not reality. Nostalgia is a selective memory that often ignores the present truth. You're not chasing the person they are now. You're chasing the version of them that no longer exists. Stopping the chase isn't about pride or stubbornness. It's about protecting your sense of self. When you put yourself in a position where you're constantly trying to prove your worth, you begin to measure your value based on someone else's recognition. And when that recognition doesn't come, you start believing you're not enough. That belief is poison. It affects how you see yourself, how you treat yourself, and even how others perceive you. Standing still when love is walking away takes strength. It requires resisting the urge to fill the silence, to force connection, to demand attention. It's not passive, it's active self-respect. It's the decision to say, if you no longer choose me, I will still choose myself. That choice is powerful because it shifts your focus from controlling someone else's behavior to controlling your own. Think about the dynamic from another perspective. When someone knows they can walk away and you will chase, the balance of power in the relationship tips entirely in their favor. They have no urgency to address problems or invest effort because they believe you'll always be there, waiting. But when you stop chasing, you send a different message. You show that your presence is a privilege, not a given. You demonstrate that love is a two-way street and that you are not willing to carry the full weight of it alone. This doesn't mean you become cold or unkind. It means you stop overextending yourself for someone who isn't meeting you halfway. It means you redirect your energy toward the parts of your life you can nurture, your passions, your friendships, your own personal growth. The more you pour into yourself, the less you feel the need to beg for scraps of affection from someone who has stopped offering them freely. There's also a psychological element at play here. People tend to value what they have to work for. When everything is handed to them with no effort, they take it for granted. In relationships, this means that when you chase someone relentlessly, you remove the need for them to pursue you in return. And when pursuit disappears, desire often fades completely. Sometimes the most effective way to inspire someone to reevaluate your worth is to step back and allow them to feel your absence. Of course, this isn't a game. It's not about manipulating someone into wanting you again. It's about recognizing the reality of the situation and making choices that honor your self-worth. If someone comes back after you've stopped chasing, it should be because they genuinely want to, not because they miss the convenience of your constant effort. And if they don't come back, you've already begun the process of moving forward. Letting go of the chase also opens the door for clarity. When you're constantly running after someone, you can't see the full picture. You're too focused on closing the distance. But when you stop, you can observe from a place of stillness. You can see whether they turn around and take steps toward you, or whether they continue to drift away. Their actions in that moment tell you more than any words ever could. It's not easy to resist chasing because in the heat of loss, every instinct tells you to act. You think that doing nothing is the same as giving up. But there's a difference between giving up on love and giving up on losing yourself. Standing still is not surrender. It's choosing not to play a losing game. It's understanding that real love doesn't require you to beg for a seat at the table. Sometimes, the act of not chasing is what allows you to heal. When you stop pouring energy into someone who's not pouring it back, you create space to focus on yourself. You start to rebuild your confidence, your joy, your inner strength. And that transformation often leads you to a place where you realize that you don't actually want back what you were chasing. You want something better, something mutual, balanced, and enduring. In the end, chasing someone who's walking away is like running after a train that's already left the station. You might exhaust yourself in the process, but you're unlikely to catch it. And even if you do, you'll find yourself in a carriage that's still heading in the wrong direction. When love turns cold, the bravest thing you can do is stop running after it. Stand still. Stand strong. Let them go if they need to go. Because if love has to be hunted down and dragged back, it's not the kind of love that will ever truly stay. When someone's love begins to fade, it's easy to take it personally. You start searching for the flaw in yourself that must have caused the shift. You analyze every word you've said, every choice you've made, every imperfection you've ever had, as if somewhere in that list lies the exact reason why they no longer look at you the same way. That's the trap. Believing their change in feelings is somehow proof that you are less, that you are unworthy, that you failed. But here's the reality. A person's decision to pull away is about them, not you. Your worth is not determined by how much someone else chooses to value you in a given moment. The danger of tying your self-worth to another person's love is that you hand them the power to define you. As long as they adore you, you feel good about yourself. But the moment they withdraw, your confidence crumbles. This is why it's so important to guard your sense of self with everything you have, because people are unpredictable. Their emotions, their priorities, their capacity for love will change over time. And if your self-image is built on something that's unstable, you will always feel like you're standing on shaky ground. Think of your worth as the foundation of a building. If it's solid, the structure can withstand storms. But if it's built on the shifting sands of someone else's approval, the smallest tremor will send cracks running through it. Relationships are meant to be partnerships, not life support systems for our identity. When you depend entirely on another person to make you feel valuable, you give away your independence, your strength, and your emotional stability. Guarding your self-worth begins with remembering that who you are is not defined by how someone else feels about you today. Their opinion can change because of circumstances you have no control over: stress, insecurity, temptation, even their own personal growth pulling them in a different direction. It might hurt to admit it, but people can love you deeply one season and still decide to walk away in another. That says more about their journey than it does about your value. The mistake many make when love turns cold is to start negotiating with themselves. Maybe if I were prettier, maybe if I made more money, maybe if I changed my personality. You begin reshaping yourself to fit their shifting desires, forgetting that the person they first loved was the person you actually were, not the watered-down, contorted version you've become in your desperation to keep them. This is why holding your ground matters. If you lose yourself to keep someone, you'll eventually lose them too, and then you'll be left with nothing, not even yourself. Guarding your worth also means refusing to let rejection become your reflection. Just because someone no longer chooses you doesn't mean you are unworthy of being chosen. People reject others for all sorts of reasons: timing, fear of commitment, personal struggles that have nothing to do with you. Sometimes they're not capable of giving the kind of love you deserve. That is their limitation, not your deficiency. Guarding your worth also means refusing to let rejection become your reflection. Just because someone no longer chooses you doesn't mean you are unworthy of being chosen. People reject others for all sorts of reasons: timing, fear of commitment, personal struggles that have nothing to do with you. Sometimes they're not capable of giving the kind of love you deserve. That is their limitation, not your deficiency. There's a strength that comes from knowing your value so deeply that no one's departure can shake it. That doesn't mean you won't hurt when love ends. You will. It means you won't start believing you are less because of it. You'll see the loss for what it is, the end of a chapter, not the end of your worth. This is why self-respect and self-love are not just nice concepts, they are survival tools. If you truly believe in your own value, you'll walk away from situations where you're not valued, even if it breaks your heart. You'll understand that staying somewhere you're treated as less than you deserve will only teach you to see yourself through that same diminished lens. Protecting your worth also involves setting boundaries, not just with others, but with yourself. You have to decide in advance how you will allow people to treat you and what you will not tolerate. You have to commit to never begging for respect, to never fighting for crumbs when you deserve the whole table. Boundaries aren't walls to keep love out. They're safeguards to ensure that only the right kind of love gets in. There's a common belief that love should be unconditional, and while that sounds beautiful in theory, it can be dangerous when misunderstood. Love can be deep, forgiving, and patient, but it should never come at the expense of your dignity. Guarding your self-worth means understanding that you can love someone deeply and still decide that the way they treat you is unacceptable. You can care for them while choosing to walk away because your own value is not negotiable. It's also worth remembering that self-worth doesn't mean arrogance. It's not about thinking you're perfect or above anyone else. It's about knowing that you are enough exactly as you are, that you don't have to prove your value through someone else's acceptance. It's about walking into a room with the quiet certainty that you belong there, even if nobody says so. One of the hardest parts about maintaining your self-worth when love turns cold is the silence it creates inside you. That space where their validation used to be feels empty, and in that emptiness, self-doubt can echo loudly. That's when you have to fill it with your own voice, the one that reminds you of your strengths, your resilience, the battles you've already survived. The voice that says, "I was whole before you, and I will be whole after you." Sometimes the person who turns cold toward you isn't malicious. They're simply no longer aligned with your path. But whether the shift comes from betrayal, neglect, or just the natural drifting apart that life can bring, your responsibility is the same. Protect your sense of self from erosion. Don't let someone's fading feelings take pieces of you with them as they go. In the end, guarding your self-worth is about remembering that love is something you give and receive. It is not something that defines your existence. You existed before they came into your life, and you will exist after. Your value doesn't rise and fall with their affection. You are the constant. You are the foundation. And that truth is what will keep you steady, even when the cold winds of fading love try to shake you. When love turns cold, the first instinct for many is to respond in kind. If they withdraw, you withdraw. If they stop speaking with warmth, you let your tone harden too. It feels like a way to protect yourself, to match their energy so you won't feel like the only one still trying. But turning cold yourself often does more damage than you think. It doesn't shield you, it corrodes you. You start carrying bitterness like armor, but instead of protecting you, it slowly poisons you from the inside. When someone you love begins to pull away or treat you differently, it's easy to let resentment take root. You replay the hurt in your mind, keeping score of every slight, every moment they failed to show up for you. That bitterness feels justified. It feels like a way to reclaim power in a situation where you feel powerless. But here's the truth. Holding on to bitterness is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to suffer. It's self-destructive. It turns you into someone you don't recognize, someone who's defined more by pain than by purpose. The alternative is boundaries. Boundaries are not revenge. They are preservation. They are the invisible lines that say, I will not allow this behavior in my space. They are how you choose to respond to coldness without losing your own warmth and integrity. Instead of retaliating with equal coldness, you decide how much access this person has to you, to your time, to your emotional energy. Boundaries allow you to protect what matters most, your peace. When you have boundaries, you don't have to build walls around your heart out of bitterness. You can still be compassionate, but you're no longer available for repeated harm. You can still love someone, but from a distance that keeps you safe. That's the difference between reacting and responding. Reaction is fueled by emotion, hurt, anger, betrayal. Response is fueled by clarity. You know your limits, and you enforce them without apology. Setting boundaries in the face of cold love is not about punishing the other person. It's about respecting yourself. If you let their behavior dictate your emotional state entirely, you hand over control of your well-being. Boundaries put that control back in your hands. They allow you to decide how you will participate in the relationship going forward, or whether you will participate at all. For example, if they've stopped showing up emotionally, your boundary might be that you no longer share your deepest thoughts with them because those conversations now leave you feeling empty or dismissed. If they've become verbally harsh, your boundary might be that you step away from interactions when the conversation turns disrespectful. If their coldness comes in the form of neglect, your boundary might be to stop overextending yourself for someone who isn't meeting you halfway. Without boundaries, you become reactive to every shift in their mood. You find yourself constantly adjusting, trying to guess how to win back their warmth. This leaves you in a perpetual state of instability, always waiting for the next sign of rejection. But when you establish clear limits, you remove yourself from the emotional chaos. You no longer base your day on whether or not they gave you attention. You choose your actions based on what is healthy for you. There's a common misconception that boundaries mean cutting someone off entirely, but that's not always the case. Sometimes boundaries simply change the shape of the relationship. You might still see the person, still care for them, but your emotional investment is no longer unconditional. You interact in ways that don't compromise your self-respect or drain your energy. The challenge is that setting boundaries often feels uncomfortable at first. If you've spent a long time overgiving or trying to please, the act of saying no or this doesn't work for me can feel selfish. But boundaries are not selfish. They're an act of self-care. They communicate to the other person how to treat you, and they remind you of your own value. In the absence of boundaries, resentment grows. You keep letting the same behavior slide, all while silently collecting evidence of their neglect or disrespect. This silent tally becomes a weight you carry, one that hardens your heart. Eventually, you may not even want to fix the relationship anymore. You just want them to feel the same hurt you've been holding on to. That's what bitterness does. It shifts your focus from healing to hurting back. And when you live in that space, you're no longer free. Boundaries break that cycle. They take you out of the game of retaliation and place you in a position of choice. You no longer need to match their coldness because you've created a structure that prevents it from consuming you. You can say, I care about you, but I will not tolerate this, and then actually enforce it. This doesn't mean boundaries are always met with understanding. In fact, when you first set them, the other person may push back. They may accuse you of being distant, difficult, or overly sensitive. That's because boundaries disrupt patterns, especially patterns where the other person benefits from you having none. But your job is not to make them comfortable at the expense of your own well-being. Your job is to stay consistent. When love turns cold, boundaries give you the strength to remain the person you want to be. You don't have to become hardened to survive. You just have to be clear about where you stand and what you will accept. Bitterness closes your heart and makes you distrust everyone who comes after. Boundaries, on the other hand, allow you to move forward without carrying the weight of this one experience into the rest of your life. There's a certain power in refusing to match the worst parts of someone else's behavior. It shows that your identity isn't dependent on theirs, that you don't need to compromise your values to protect yourself. You can maintain your dignity while protecting your heart, and that's what boundaries make possible. You can still walk away from a cold love without turning cold yourself. You can still say enough without saying never again to every possibility of connection. The point isn't to stop loving, it's to stop bleeding for someone who's no longer willing to bandage the wounds they've caused. Boundaries keep you from losing yourself in the process of saving someone else. And when you've built them, you'll find something surprising. You no longer need to carry the bitterness, because you're no longer living in a situation that fuels it. The cold may still be there, but it's on the other side of a line you've drawn, and you are free to stay warm, intact, and unbroken on your side of it. When love grows cold, it can whisper some of the most dangerous lies you'll ever hear, lies that take root deep in your mind if you're not careful. These lies don't shout, they creep in quietly, disguised as your own thoughts. You weren't enough. You must have done something wrong. If you had been better, they would have stayed. At first, they seem like reasonable questions, but before long, they become statements you accept as truth. And once you start believing those lies, you carry them forward into every relationship that follows, building your life on a foundation that was never real in the first place. When someone withdraws their love, it's natural to search for answers. You replay every moment, dissect every word, and dig through every memory to find the exact point where things began to shift. But here's the hard truth. Sometimes there is no single moment, no clear explanation, no act you could have changed to prevent it. People's hearts change for reasons that are often invisible to you, and sometimes even to them. Their coldness is not a direct measurement of your worth. It's a reflection of where they are, what they want, and the limitations they carry. The danger comes when you confuse their departure or distance with proof that you are unlovable. This is where the lies gain power, because they blend just enough with your insecurities to feel believable. If you've ever doubted yourself before, their withdrawal will feel like confirmation of those doubts. And unless you catch it in time, you'll internalize those feelings and start shaping your identity around them. That's why it's so important to separate the truth from the story you're telling yourself. The truth might be that the relationship no longer worked for them. The truth might be that they lacked the capacity, maturity, or willingness to keep building something together. But the story you tell yourself might twist that into, "I'm not worthy of lasting love," or "I will always be abandoned." That false narrative is what keeps you trapped, not the loss itself, but the meaning you attach to it. If you carry the lies forward, they become the lens through which you see everything. You'll walk into new relationships expecting to be left, so you hold back. You'll assume that every disagreement means the other person is about to walk out, so you react with fear or defensiveness. You'll settle for less than you deserve because you've convinced yourself you're not entitled to more. In this way, the lie becomes more damaging than the original heartbreak. It begins to dictate how you live. Learning the lesson, not the lie, is about shifting from self-blame to self-awareness. Instead of asking, "What was wrong with me?" you ask, "What can I take from this to protect myself and grow?" That might mean realizing you ignored red flags too early. It might mean seeing how you overextended yourself for someone who wasn't matching your effort. It might mean acknowledging that you stayed too long because you were afraid of being alone. Those lessons are valuable. They equip you for the future. But the lies, they rob you of the future entirely. Taking the lesson means looking at the relationship with clarity, not distortion. You acknowledge the good and the bad without romanticizing or vilifying. You see your role in what happened, not to punish yourself, but to ensure you don't repeat unhealthy patterns. You identify where your boundaries were too loose, where your needs went unspoken, where you ignored your instincts. This kind of reflection builds resilience. It transforms heartbreak from something that weakens you into something that strengthens you. But here's the challenge. Your mind will resist this process. It's easier to accept the lie than to do the work of facing uncomfortable truths. The lie is simple. They left because I wasn't enough. The truth is harder. Maybe I allowed a dynamic that wasn't healthy for me. Maybe I stayed quiet when I should have spoken. Maybe they couldn't love me the way I needed to be loved. The truth forces you to take responsibility for your part, but it also gives you the power to change it. The lie keeps you powerless, forever waiting for someone else to validate you. Choosing the lesson over the lie is also about emotional discipline. It's about catching those thoughts in real time before they cement themselves in your identity. The moment you hear yourself thinking, I was the problem, you stop and ask, is that really true, or is that the pain talking? You challenge your assumptions the way a good friend would, reminding yourself of your strengths, your worth, and the fact that someone's inability to love you properly does not erase your value. The people who navigate heartbreak the best are not the ones who avoid pain. They're the ones who refuse to let pain define them. They grieve, they feel, they acknowledge the hurt, but they don't build their self-image out of the rubble. They salvage what's useful, the insight, the wisdom, the sharper sense of what they knew, and they leave the rest behind. Sometimes the lesson is as simple as this. Not everyone you give your heart to will know how to care for it, and that's okay. Your worth is not diminished because they failed to see it. Just like a diamond doesn't lose value because someone mistook it for glass, your value remains intact even when someone doesn't recognize it. The right person, the right friend, the right partner will see it, and they won't let it go cold. But you can't find that person or even create that life if you're still carrying the lies of the past. Lies weigh you down, make you suspicious of every good thing, and keep you tethered to people who have long since moved on. Lessons, on the other hand, free you. They sharpen your judgment, deepen your understanding, and give you the confidence to choose better next time. There's a subtle but powerful shift that happens when you take the lesson instead of the lie. You move from being the person something happened to being the person who happened to grow from it. That shift changes everything. It changes how you see yourself, how you carry yourself, and how you let others treat you. You stop walking into rooms wondering if you're enough, and you start walking in knowing that whether or not anyone else sees it, you are already complete. When love turns cold, you have two choices. You can let it plant seeds of doubt that will grow into walls around your heart. Or you can let it be a teacher, one that shows you exactly where you need to stand stronger, speak louder, or walk away sooner next time. The pain is unavoidable, but whether that pain becomes your prison or your passport is entirely up to you. Sometimes the hardest part of moving forward is not the physical act of leaving, but the mental tug-of-war with your own memories. When love turns cold, your mind will tempt you to revisit the warmth it once gave you. You'll find yourself replaying old conversations, laughing again at inside jokes, and revisiting those golden moments where everything felt safe and certain. Nostalgia, in this way, becomes a siren. It calls you back, not because the present is better there, but because the past feels more comfortable than facing the unknown. And that's where you need to be careful, because comfort isn't always good for you. Sometimes comfort is the very thing keeping you from growing. When a relationship has lost its spark, you'll feel an urge to chase that spark as though the right gesture, the right words, or the right memory could reignite it. You'll scroll through old photos, reread old messages, and start believing that if you could just go back to how it used to be, everything would be fine. But here's the truth. Time doesn't rewind, and neither do people. The version of them who loved you the way you remember doesn't exist anymore, at least not in the same way. The circumstances have changed, the dynamics have shifted, and pretending otherwise keeps you stuck in an illusion. When you choose forward, you make a conscious decision to stop bargaining with the past. You stop making deals in your head. If I change this, maybe they'll come back. Or, if they see me doing well, they'll remember why they loved me. That's not moving forward. That's living in a holding pattern. And holding patterns don't get you anywhere. You have to ask yourself, do I want to wait for something that may never come back? Or do I want to create a life that doesn't depend on it? Choosing forward means deliberately shifting your focus to what's ahead. It's not about rushing into something new or distracting yourself with temporary fixes. It's about allowing space for a new version of yourself to emerge. The end of a relationship, especially one that meant so much, can feel like the end of your identity. You've been a part of us for so long that being just you feels incomplete. But here's where the opportunity lies. You get to rediscover the parts of yourself that maybe you neglected, the dreams you shelved, the passions you put on hold. Forward is about creating instead of clinging. Instead of trying to piece together what's broken, you start building something entirely new. And that requires courage. It requires you to tolerate uncertainty. It demands that you walk through days where you don't feel okay, and nights where the silence is heavy. But every time you choose to keep walking, you prove to yourself that you can survive without the thing you thought you couldn't live without. There will be triggers, songs, places, scents that pull you right back into the past. In those moments, you'll have to decide, do I linger here, or do I acknowledge it, feel it, and then step forward anyway? Moving on doesn't mean you erase the past. You don't have to hate the memories to release them. You can honor what it was without making it your prison. The past can be a teacher without being a destination. Part of choosing forward is also about opening yourself to new forms of love. Not necessarily romantic love at first, but love in all its shapes. Love for your friends, your family, your craft, your own well-being. When love turns cold in one place, it doesn't mean it has disappeared from the world. It just means it's time to find it elsewhere, and most importantly, within yourself. Because the truth is, until you learn to love and value yourself without someone else's validation, every relationship will hold the power to break you the same way again. You have to remind yourself daily, there is more ahead of me than behind me. There are experiences I haven't had yet, people I haven't met yet, and joys I haven't felt yet. Life didn't end when that love ended. In fact, it might be just beginning. Sometimes what feels like loss is really a clearing, making room for something better, something more aligned with the person you are becoming. Forward isn't about forgetting them, it's about remembering you. It's about understanding that you were whole before them and you'll be whole after them. It's about reclaiming the energy you were giving to the past and investing it in a future that excites you. And that doesn't happen by accident. It happens because you make the choice over and over again to walk toward what's next instead of staring at what's gone. Even on the days you feel like you're moving in slow motion, remember this: any step forward is still progress. Healing is not a straight line, but every decision you make to choose yourself, to choose growth, and to choose the future is a victory. Little by little, step by step, you'll realize that the hold the past once had on you is weakening. You'll start to breathe easier, you'll laugh without forcing it, you'll look ahead without needing to glance back, and one day, without even realizing it, you'll wake up and the ove that turned cold will no longer feel like the center of your story. It will simply be a chapter you've read, understood, and left behind, so you can write the rest of the book on your own terms. And so when love turns cold, you have a choice. You can chase the fading warmth until you lose yourself, or you can step into the fire you create within. Cold love might leave you wounded, but it also leaves you free. Free to rebuild, to set higher standards, and to meet a version of yourself you never knew existed. Remember, love from others is a gift, but love for yourself is a necessity. The seasons will change, the ice will melt, and when it does, you'll find you didn't just survive, you transformed.